staircase rails, things that are used by lots of people, and you pick up the virus on your hand, and then you touch your face or something like that, or you eat, and you get the virus into you. So washing your hands frequently is important. I think the other thing is to be really mindful about if you feel any symptoms, checking it out. If you go to the VDH website, and just Google VDH and go to our website, there's something that we have on there now called COVID check. And you click on that, and it takes you to a site where you can put in, I have a sore throat and I'm coughing, and your age, and it'll walk you through and give you an idea of whether or not you have symptoms that are concerning for COVID-19, and then we'll connect you to some provider or point you to a testing site. Even if you don't want to do the symptom check thing, we have on our website a list of all, not a map with all of the testing sites across the entire state, and you can look at that and click on that and get the telephone numbers and so on. So in terms of best practices for protecting yourself in this current phase of our recovery, I would say check your symptoms, maintain social distancing as much as you can, particularly if you're high risk like me. You're in the older age group, and quite frankly, I think our entire African-American community is at high risk. So I think social distancing is still important. If you can't maintain social distancing, be sure that you're wearing a mask and wash your hands frequently. You do those things, I think you can really protect yourself and your loved ones. I'm going to stop there so that the other panelists can have a chance to speak, and we'll be happy to address questions later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Oliver. We really appreciate that information being shared. I recently just put a link in the chat where you can utilize a URL to find testing locations nearest you as relates to testing to see where you stand. Also, keep in mind that testing is free for those who are uninsured and underinsured. But the Virginia Department of Health said to be careful, to know that sometimes it still may incur a charge, but they can help out with assistance. So you can utilize that link there. Again, Dr. Oliver, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll be able to answer some questions shortly.
Thank you. Looking at your background, I guess I really should say Wakanda forever.
Yes, sir. We're now going to turn it over to Delegate Dolores McQuinn, who's going to share her personal story and how she's doing and how she's advocating now. Delegate McQuinn.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Josh, and to Jennifer and Dr. Oliver. I am just honored to be on a panel with these esteemed individuals who are working extremely hard to just try to create a paradigm shift, which we need at this time. But I am again just honored. So thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the work that you're doing. This has been certainly a journey that I guess I didn't expect at this time in my life. I had, I guess it's novel. We had no clue, I guess, in terms of that not just as a nation, but as a world, we will be facing something as deadly as this virus is. And this firsthand experience has certainly been an eye opener for me in terms of just my family's ability to persevere, doing and then holding on to something, our faith and hope, because that's exactly what we believe got us through this. I always say that we are recipients of God's grace and mercy, and in this I will sing that song until I'm no longer here, okay? Because when I look at what has happened to so many families across this world, across this nation, and in Virginia, I know that it was nothing that we did, but it was only grace and mercy that covered us. So I'm grateful for that. My daughter came home sick one day, and I want to use, first of all, the analogy, or use something that my granddaughter said to me after we were almost through the situation in our homes. And we were talking, we were outside one day, and she said to me, she called me G-Lo. She said, G-Lo, you know why? And she loves, first of all, loves doing riddles or jokes as a 6-year-old. Most of the time they're not funny. I just laugh because she's 6 years old. But anyway, she said, do you know why the coronavirus wants brothers and sisters? And I paused and pondered, like most good grandparents would do. And finally I said, no. And she looked at me as if, wow, you don't know that answer? But I said, why? She said, they want brothers and sisters. So the coronavirus want brothers and sisters so it can spread. And she took her hands and extended her hands out. She said, do you get it? So it can spread. And I never thought about it like that. The riddle was interesting to me until I heard Sanjay Gupta say that the coronavirus is a family and it actually has descendants. And spreading is exactly what it did in my household. I mean, my daughter came sick from work, complaining all week about others being sick in the environment. And she kept saying, Mom, I'm hoping that they don't have the coronavirus. She said, because I don't want to bring it to you at home, to you and Dad. And I've got 2 little children, 2 years old and 6 years old. And she talked about that like all week. She called her superior and said, I think we need gloves and masks, because there are clients coming into the bank. And they actually did nothing. They didn't give them gloves. They didn't give them masks. They just were basically left to fend for themselves. And so that Thursday, she came home extremely ill, and she just laid on the sofa. And I said to her, are you okay? Do you need to go to the doctor? She said, I think I'll be okay. But she went downhill from there. We had her tested on that Saturday, but the test did not come back until like 7 days later. Now this is around March the 19th. I guess 4 days after she was ill, I start feeling bad. It was one night, the cough, a very dry cough. It was chills. It was body pain. But meanwhile, I'm doing this trying to navigate around her situation because she's having temperature of 103. She's having chills. Her body, by this time she's quarantined in one room in the house. Her body was aching so bad that she, I just didn't know what to do. I called the doctors and they kept saying, how is her breathing? How is her breathing? And I said, she's just saying that her chest is hurting very bad and her body is hurting very bad. And they said, well, watch her, give her cold and warm. Make sure you try to get Tylenols in her to keep the temperature down. If she runs into a problem with her breathing, get her to the emergency room immediately. So I start feeling bad. Then my husband started feeling bad. By this time, I guess days had gone on, the test had come in that she was positive for the coronavirus. And my husband, and the truth about it, I've got underlying conditions. I'm a diabetic. Genetically, my mom and dad, both had it, and deal with blood pressure as well. But they were hit so hard that it scared me to death. My husband kept it in it, and I guess it's still haunt me when he's saying, my toes hurt so bad. Anything can do for my toes. I mean, we were just, and so again, I'm trying to help because we got 2 little kids in the household. Both of them are in bed, unable to do anything. For the most part, and just trying to bring it home, when I look at what happened to us and what we had to endure. I don't want this to occur. I don't want this to happen to anyone. And that's why I am out there trying to advocate. Listen, wear your gloves, practice social distancing. If you don't have to go out, stay in. If you do have to go out, make sure that you're going somewhere that you know you are protected and you are protecting others. This thing is deadly, it's vicious, it's notorious, it's mean. And I don't know, my granddaughter when said it spreads because it wants sisters and brothers. Well, my message to my sisters and brothers who are on this line now, this chat, we want you to stay alive. This thing has one objective. If it catches, if it's transmitted to you, hopefully your body and your immune system is strong enough to fight it. But the other thing is that its objective is to attach itself to you and not only spray it on you, but spray it in you. And so I would just say, because of all of the challenges that come along with this, body rash, extreme chest and neck pain, constant cough, excruciating headaches, my husband again with the toe issue, a metallic taste, no taste at all or smell. And that's how I really first found out when I told the doctor I couldn't taste anything and I could not smell my morning's coffee. I really knew that I was in trouble and we were in trouble. Thanks be to God, we're fine. I want my brothers and sisters to get a grip. I've gone out to Walmart, I've gone to some other places, and the number of individuals that I see that are not practicing the CDC guidelines with a mask or distance, I'm just shamed by it. And I really am. Not only does it physically just put your life in uproar, but mentally what my family had to go through too was not a pretty sight. So thank you again for allowing me to share this, and any questions as we go along will be fine.
Thank you, Delegate McQuinn, for sharing your story. I think a lot of times we need to hear from someone who has gone through the situation for it to hit home for us. And I'll never forget when the speaker sent an email to all of us letting us know that you had contracted the virus and to keep you lifted in prayer. Immediately, I sent you a text message because I was concerned. And what we have to make sure we understand is, we see it on TV, we see it on social media, but until we know someone who we know personally that has had this or has passed from this, it's not really going to hit home. And so thank you for telling your story. Thank you for advocating. I can sit here and say I've had at least 5 family members who have contracted the virus. They all have been older and they have all survived and come out on the other side of it. So we're excited to hear that, but that's not the same story for some others. And I know of at least 15 pastors that have passed and have succumbed to the virus. And so we have to make sure that we're keeping each other accountable, holding each other up, and making sure that we take this seriously. So again, thank you. To those who are participating, I do see your questions. We're going to turn it over to Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy, who will give us an update on the House of Delegates, what the General Assembly is doing, and what people can expect to have, whatever benefits are out there. She'll give us an update legislatively what's going on. And then after she gives us that update, we'll turn it over to questions and see who we have to answer those questions. So Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy.
Thank you, Delegate Josh Cole. And it's an honor and privilege to be on this panel with Delegate Dolores McQuinn and Dr. Norman Oliver. Everyone is hard at work ensuring that we protect the lives and safety as many Virginians as we possibly can. And so for me, I'll start off by talking about how the administration and what's happening here in Virginia to effectively help as many people as possible. So I'm excited about the fact that Governor Northam's administration has dedicated $58 million in federal CARES Act dollars to ramp up contact tracing. here in Virginia. And so there's a number of things we keep hearing from the experts that has to happen before we can come towards recovery and get back to our new normal. And one of the things is widespread testing. The second thing is widespread contact tracing. And so to know that we are actually going to have 1,000 new contact tracers, and Virginia Department of Health is working to hire 200 new communicable disease investigators is phenomenal. That shows that we're on the right track doing what needs to get done so we can be successful. Also, there's a COVID-19 health equity work group that's reviewing policies and determining bills that's been enacted or that could be implemented to help the most vulnerable populations throughout Virginia. So I think that's effective. I know for all of us, we're doing constituent services. One of the things that was brought to my attention that there was a particular hospital that was asking for proof of citizenship. And in Prince William County, where we have a large Latinx population, that can have a chilling effect. Because identification is one thing, proof of citizenship is something else. Yeah. And so we don't want Latinx people dying in their homes because they fear deportation if they go and get tested or get treatment for their symptoms. So immediately I contacted the hospital and they said that that's going to definitely be addressed. So these are the things we have to be aware of. These are the things your legislators are working diligently on. And we're hearing from our community on how we can improve, and that's exactly what we're doing. And I'm excited to see the health equity work group come together and put forth practices and policy recommendations in order to assure that we have the safety of our community members. Also, there's more widespread testing that's happening. There's a number of testing events that's happening throughout our Commonwealth. I know in my district alone, I can name several locations that at the Walmart and at Toto's and at different places where you can literally walk up or drive up and get tested. We're trying to make it as easy, efficient, and convenient as possible for as many people as possible. So there's no excuse why anyone should not know their status if they're positive for COVID-19. As Delegate Cole said, for the most part, it is free, right? So the testing is free. We're also hopefully leaning that the treatment will be free also. Now that we expanded Medicaid to over 400,000 Virginians, that is a great step in the right direction, but there's still more that we can do, and we're working diligently to find where there's opportunities and plug those holes. Something I'm also excited about is homelessness. In Virginia, the Commonwealth was one of the first states to implement homeless assistance efforts statewide to provide to provide shelter and bolster the safety of congregate shelter for most of the most vulnerable Virginians with assistance from FEMA and other federal funds. So I know that my husband, he houses homeless people in Prince William County, and Prince William, Fairfax, a couple of other jurisdictions have bought out complete hotels, and they're housing people who are very vulnerable or people who are positive for COVID-19. Because when you're homeless, and as Dr. Oliver said, you need to wash your hands, but when you're homeless, where's the sink, right? And when you're living in a tent community, 6 feet is almost impossible. So we have to ensure that we're protecting these communities. The majority of them, unfortunately, are brown and Black people. And so to know that we're putting a concerted effort to addressing homelessness and protect the people who cannot necessarily protect themselves during this crisis, I think that is a huge step in the right direction, because you show me how we treat our most vulnerable people, and I show you what that society really stands for. So that is something that's really important. So something that people have been asking is, what more can we do? We're going to have a special session. It's most likely going to be in August. So the governor announces when we have a special session. It's the Speaker of the House who decides what's heard. So I anticipate that she will say that it needs to probably be COVID-19 related, because we do have very bill-friendly legislators who will put in 40 bills if given the opportunity. So it will most likely be COVID-19 related, and it might even be narrowed to say, it has to deal with the budget or has to do with things that'll cause irreparable harm if we don't deal with it in a special session, because we do have a full session coming in the next couple of months. But some of the things I would like to see, just on my wish list, vote by mail. Vote by mail. So I know that in some other states, governors have done it by executive order. We can do it here legislatively, but we don't want to be Wisconsin, and we don't want thousands of people descending on one location to participate in this democracy. People should not have to to choose between their constitutional right to vote and protecting their lives and lives of their safety and their loved ones. So actually having something like vote by mail would be phenomenal, where we have every registered voter get a ballot in the mail, but also keeping polling locations open, because we have homeless populations. We have people who don't receive consistent mail delivery. And because we passed same day voter registration beginning July 1st of this year, we must have polling locations open to be able to effectuate that. So we have worked very hard to improve and increase access to the ballot. And this is just something else that we can do because we all know how important November is this year. And then something like paid sick days. You know, I know that I've heard from a lot of legislators, and we've really regretted not being able to pass that effort, because how many people can use 14 days of paid sick days to take care of themselves or their loved ones if they became sick? I know Delegate McQuinn could, testify to that. And so having these job protections that will uplift so many working families is exactly what we need. And COVID-19 has just exposed what was already beneath the surface, that too many Virginians can't earn a decent paycheck. They're struggling with healthcare, and they just can't get ahead. And so now is a great time to talk about policies grounded in equity. Now it's time to talk about how COVID-19 has had this disparate impact because of the structural and social and systemic and historical inequities in our systems. So we talk about the increase in respiratory issues, diabetes, blood pressure, all increase the mortality rate of COVID-19, but that really stems from food deserts, which is something that Delegate McQuinn has fought for vehemently for the past several years. It's about the lack of access to clean air and clean water, which are environmental impacts that African Americans bear the brunt of because of where we live and where these utilities and businesses sometimes decide to place their power lines and their coal ash, plants. We talk about, all of these issues about economic inequality, which is the reason why a lot of African Americans, brown and blacks, why are Latinx having such higher rates? Is because of the lack of ability to telecommute and to take paid leave, and the necessity for them to use public transportation that increases their likelihood of exposure. And being the majority of all service workers, whether it's retail or grocery, which puts them right on the front lines, jeopardizing their lives and their safety for all of us. So once we can actually address all of these other collateral issues, that's when we'll really start to make movement on improving something like the COVID-19. I anticipate we'll also address bills like the one that Delegate Marcia Price passed related to evictions. And there's work being done on that now that says, we've halted evictions here in Virginia, but then what? We don't want people to have a $4,000 rent payment in the next 2-3 months. What are you going to do then? You can afford $1,000, right? And so we're helping people by halting that, but then what happens after that? So it's really about working with the banks to make sure that they can give relief to the landowners and the homeowners, so then they can pass that along to the renters and to the actual people who have mortgages. So those are the things that we're working on. And when we get a fiscal forecast to know exactly how big of a hole COVID-19 has blown in our budget, how much money our revenue sources is actually down, then we could talk about what programs we can fully fund and what it really takes to move Virginia forward. And I'm excited to have this conversation with all of the legislators. And I am sure that we are going to be proactive and productive in getting things done for the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I'll stop there so people can ask questions.
Well, thank you so much for that update. And I just want people to understand how the General Assembly works, as Delegate Carol Foy has so eloquently stated, that because we're not currently in session, there's not much that we can do. Our hands are kind of tied. But there is a strong possibility that the governor will call a special session so that we can specifically handle issues related to the COVID pandemic right about now. So keep your eyes and ears open. Once the governor calls that special session, we'll be able to get back down to Richmond and help the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have received a few questions. Some of them have been specific to panelists, and some of them have just been basic questions. But Delegate McQuinn, there was a question directed to you. And the question was, from the time you started showing the symptoms and feeling it, how long did it last? When could you feel you were on the other side?
Interesting question, because, and Dr. Oliver, I'm not sure you are aware of this, but anyway, I think about a month afterwards, after we had gone through, I think the most probably the horrific period of this virus, we went back to have chest X-rays. In particular, I was concerned about my husband. Now this is 25 days, maybe 30 days later. He had double pneumonia. My daughter had inflamed lungs. We all three were retested. My husband tested negative. My daughter and I both tested positive.
Mm.
Right. And we were told 14-day quarantine. That's what, that's what the CDC or the guidelines are. It is, going through this is interesting because, interesting in a way that that you're feeling better. And that's what happened to my family. When you're walking up five steps on the stairway and you don't have to stop to try to get your breath, or you walk outside, but it was constantly trying to deal with, and I'm still dealing with, some of the energy issues and the shortness of breath. But I just thought Dr. Oliver I guess he can hear me, that when we went back, we still were testing positive. This is 25 to 30 days later. And basically, it was during that period that I insist that all of us go and get a chest X-ray, because we were not feeling as well as we should have, or I thought we should have. And so it takes some time. It really takes time to get through this. And my first test was April the 1st. My second test was April the 25th. And so at that time, I'm still testing positive. And I probably got the virus, picked it up before April the 1st, because by that time I was having symptoms. And my daughter came home sick on the 19th. And when we were retested on the 25th, she was 19th of March, when we were retested on the 25th of April, she was still testing positive. So I think it's each individual maybe, but I believe everyone that I've spoken with that have had a bout with it seem to have still having these lasting impact of energy and the shortness of breath.
Delegate Cole, can I make a comment here?
Yes, sir. And before you do that, there was another question that kind of segues right into that. Mm-hmm. The question was, after being cleared of having the virus, what is the likelihood you can get it again?
Exactly. Jesus, help. Can I just say, Jesus, keep us?
So, Delegate McQuinn, the test that you got in April, was that the nasal swab?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's two kinds of tests. The test where they do the nasal swab is trying to pick up actual pieces of the virus or the virus itself. And when you test positive on that test, it shows that you have virus in your body. Okay.
Okay.
If you have virus in your body, that can last for some time, but you may not have enough to make you really sick. Mm-hmm. Okay, you can be, your body's in the process of getting rid of it, and you don't have as much of the virus in you as you did earlier on, and that's why you're improving in terms of your health. And it also means you're less likely to infect others. Okay. Because you don't have as much that you can put out into the environment if you cough or something like that. The other type of test that is being done that some people will hear about is a blood test. And the blood test doesn't test whether or not you have the virus. It tests whether or not your body has had an immune response to the virus. So it lets you know whether you had the infection sometime in the past. Okay. This virus, you heard people talk about it as the novel coronavirus. That's because coronavirus is a whole family of viruses.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of
Sisters and brothers.
There's a lot of sisters and brothers. And this is a new one that we've never seen before. And we don't know how it operates. When you get a cold from a virus, you get that cold, your body builds up an immune reaction to it. You'll never get a cold from that virus again. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there's hundreds of viruses that can give you colds, so you can keep getting colds, but you won't get it from that virus again. We don't know if that's true about this coronavirus. There's some evidence, for example, out there that people who have had it once get it again. I think the only way that we'll, over time we'll learn more, but the real solution here is to develop a vaccine that gives us permanent immunity to the virus. So hopefully that's coming soon.
And Josh, when we talk about passing this on and the spreading, I know the governor is looking at this, and I'm, matter of fact, going to send him a text, because I'm advocating also for mandating that we wear masks. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We should be wearing masks. I know some people think it's going to be hot. Difficult to breathe, but at least you'll be breathing. So I'm hoping that the governor will move forward with that. Some of us may not feel that way, but I strongly advocate that we all wear masks.
Thank you for that. One more question for Dr. Well, there's quite a few questions out here that they may end up going to Dr. Oliver, but we received another question via email that says, during the devastating 1918 Spanish flu that was actually started on a pig farm in Kansas, rules and guidelines put in place by San Francisco government, such as closing all businesses, schools, churches, and places of large gatherings, as well as mass transportation in anticipation of a second wave, served to be beneficial to the survival of people of San Francisco. Would that be a wise tactic for America? And that's probably outside of your scope, because that's a question asked for the totality of the nation. But basically, would it be a good practice to shut down everything, let's say in Virginia, in anticipation of a second wave? How do you feel about that?
I don't know about in anticipation of the second wave. I know that I'm not on mute, am I? No. In this current wave, what we did was essentially that. We shut down most everything except for essential businesses. And if you look at what happened in the models that we were looking at on the spread of this disease, we really tamped down the spread of the disease in the Commonwealth of Virginia. There's probably a couple 100,000 cases that we prevented from happening. We're starting to ease up and open a little bit. And I would say, as I said in my opening remarks, that we should be very cautious about that. I would maintain the social distancing. I agree with Delegate McQuinn. If you're outside in public, you should be wearing a mask. You should be washing your hands frequently. And if we do that, we can sort of contain the spread. And then Delegate Carol Foy really hit the nail on the head about our responsibility from the health department is to ensure that as we begin to open up a little bit, we do as much testing as we possibly can, particularly in the most vulnerable communities, so that we can find people who are positive for the disease long before they get really sick, right? Get them the kind of supportive care that they need. Be able to find out who else they might have exposed so that they can get tested and protected. And in that way, we can sort of control what happens on that second spread. Now, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here, but I'm gonna have to give somewhat, I do want to put out a word of caution here. We're going to move into the fall. Flu season is going to start October-ish. And when you talk about a second wave of coronavirus, it could happen around the same time. which would be devastating unless we are prepared for it. Now, I'm, like you said, it's above my pay grade to be talking about whether or not we're going to shut everything down. So I'm not going to say that. But what I will say is we need to be looking at what's happening. We don't just go into, saying, oh, it's all over. We can go back to the way things used to be. We got to watch those numbers. And if we get any indication we got another wave coming, yes, I do think we're going to have to take some serious steps to protect people.
Josh, could I ask Dr. Oliver a question that I think may be helpful, well, I hope would be helpful? Dr. Oliver, is it anything we can do to help build up our immune system? Is there anything that you would recommend, anything we could do across the board to just begin? Because I just think, being disproportionately affected in African-American communities and Latino communities, what are those things that could help us, help your body, help, what I'm saying, mentally and physically,
Yes.
to get through these difficult times, and in terms of what may be down the road? What can we do?
That's a very tough question, Delegate McQuinn. I think Delegate Carol Foy really highlighted what the real issue is here. I wish I could say, take exercise or take vitamin C or something like that. But the real problem is structural racism.
Yes, it is.
If you get right down to it, our communities have been economically disinvested in. They don't put good food in it. So when I say eat well, I mean, how you gonna do that?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get that from 7-Eleven. It's go exercise. Really? What park am I supposed to go to? That's a safe park for me to go and take my family and exercise. So we got the food problems, the lack of jobs, lack of insurance, lack of access to really good health care. You start running through all, so these are the huge issues that we have to address. And I'm looking to the three delegates here to help out like that. and actually, because this is the NAACP forum here, I think one of the things I tell people all the time is that, what we really need, I'm a child of the 60s, right? I think we need another big civil rights movement, thing, a massive sort of social pressure on the government, so that people like myself and others in government feel the heat and start doing things to protect communities of color.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you for that.
I would say that the one good thing that came out of this coronavirus issue was that all of America's ills were exposed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. They just was out there in terms of what has been happening since slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We thank you for that. We're running short on time, but there were at least 3 other questions I want to hit on, and so we can finish on time. I'll answer 2 of those questions. Someone asked, how is Stafford County doing in relation to the rest of the state? I don't have the breakdown of all the data as it relates to race cases, but as it relates to Stafford County, as of yesterday, there was 569 cases total, with a current of 67 hospitalizations and 4 deaths in Stafford County. And so what people also have to realize as it relates to, we fall under what's called the Rappahannock region, as it relates to the Virginia Department of Health. That's Caroline, the city of Fredericksburg, King George, Spotsylvania, and Stafford County. Stafford County is the most northern part of the Rappahannock region. And a lot of our workers are commuter workers. So while they're staying home now, when this first hit, a lot of our people were running up and down the road from Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. it's a transportation hub. So a lot of people are coming in. And so it was easy to catch it and to bring it back down. And so that's why the cases were really high in Stafford County. And we're probably start to see a decline, but there may be an uptick. Keep in mind, when Northern Virginia was held back from reopening in phase 1, Stafford County was not kept in that. So we reopened last week. And so we really have to be careful, especially during this weekend with Memorial Day and cookouts and the beaches opening back up and lottie-dottie and everybody ready to get outside and have fun. Just be careful. And then another question we got, is it safe to return back to church? And as a delegate for the region, I've received many phone calls from pastors and mosque leaders and temple leaders, and they've asked me, and my response to them is use spiritual wisdom. The governor has given us guidelines on how to reopen with the 50% capacity, sanitizing, cleaning, social distancing. Our church sanctuary sits roughly 200, and pastor has indicated that there should only be 2 people per pew. And so last Sunday, we only had about 15 people that showed up. Make sure you're sanitizing and keeping sanctuaries open. My bishop in New York has stated there will be no church for the next couple of months, even if the governor does open New York back up. He stated that they won't be having church. So we have to be very, very careful. And even my mentor, Bishop in Richmond, who has a smaller congregation, has been very careful about allowing his parishioners to return back to church in the city of Richmond as well. So we just have to be very careful as relates to opening the doors of the church. And as a pastor, as a spiritual leader, I can say our job as pastors, yes, is to feed the spiritual body, but it's also to look out and care for their physical bodies as well. So you have to be very, very careful. The last question I'll give to Dr. Oliver again. Someone questioned about Kawasaki in the youth. Do you have any insight on that and how parents can better protect their children?
The protection is the same as the protection from COVID-19. This new syndrome that we're seeing have been mostly cases up in New York, but we have one case in Fairfax County. And it's the only case in Virginia I know about so far. This is a post COVID-19 syndrome. So these are all children who had COVID-19, probably had a mild case of the illness. And then after they got over the COVID-19, had this inflammatory response. And when doctors talk about inflammation, that means swelling, breakdown of blood vessels and sort of release of blood cells into your organs and your skin. And that obviously has a big impact on all the organs in your body if you have that sort of inflammation in your vasculature system. So these children get something akin to what's called Kawasaki's disease, which is a vasculitis disease, but it's not, it looks like Kawasaki's, but it's not. So it affects their kidneys or their heart, their skin, can have gastrointestinal effects. It's multiple organs. In fact, it's called multi-system inflammatory syndrome, or MIS. Protect your kids from that by protecting them from COVID-19. All right. So, Dr. McQueen, you talked about your granddaughter. I got a 5-year-old granddaughter in my house, and we're all wearing masks when we go out.
Yeah.
She understands the importance of that.
And I'm sure that the 2 little ones had it.
Mm-hmm.
They just probably, there was no way to test them.
Right.
So,
right,
but I'm sure they did.
Right. And so the other thing to do is to, since this is something that happens after they've been exposed, is we need to really watch our children. And the first sign of any kind of fever or anything, don't just write it off as a cold. Get them checked. Thankfully, it's been a rare sort of thing. So
Good. And that's good to hear. And I think, with social media and different things like that, there's really is a scare out there. We're hearing different things and we don't have all the information. And it's really hard to get access to proper, solid information in today's time.
Yes.
So we thank you for that. Thank you, Dr. Oliver. Thank you, Delegate McQuinn. Thank you, Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy. We really appreciate you all for thinking it not robbery to join us today to enlighten our communities and just share some information. This information will be put on our Facebook. Make sure you share it with other people that they understand. We learned some great things today. The importance of protecting yourself, protecting your children, and taking this virus seriously. Advocating for our communities of color as it relates to this virus, and making sure we're paying attention to what the General Assembly and the governor are going to do to help us out. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of information swirling around, and there's a lot of misinformation swirling around. So the best thing, and sad to say, the communities that miss out on the proper information are typically communities of color. We're the last people to get the proper information. So we have to remain vigilant and we have to stay up to date on what's going on. So again, I really appreciate you all. Thank you so much. For those of you who may have other questions, please don't hesitate to shoot us an email and we'll try to relay this information to the panelists and get an answer for you at a later time. But we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I'll give you all the opportunity to share your information. We'll start with Delegate McQuinn. If you just want to share some information of how people can keep in touch with you or follow you on social media, just share that information.
Well, you can, social media right now is down for my Facebook is, but you can always send to my email, Dolores McQuinn 23 at Comcast.net. Again, Dolores McQuinn 23 at Comcast.net.
Thank you. Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy.
Yes, I want to thank you so much for organizing this, Josh, and thank the staff for NAACP for the time here. You can email me in my office at my full name, jennifercarrollfoy@gmail.com. That's the simplest way to do it. And follow me on Twitter at jcarrollfoy. And Facebook, you just type in my name and I'll pop right up and answer any questions. And if you go to my Twitter account, I do have a link that'll give you all the updated information regarding unemployment benefits, COVID-19 testing sites, all of that good information. So, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Dr. Oliver.
Delegate Cole, thank you very much. And thanks to the staff at NAACP for inviting me today. This has been a really wonderful discussion. The way to reach me is at norm.oliver@vdh.virginia.gov. That's my email address. At VDH Commissioner is my Twitter account. So I'm happy. Any questions that folks have that I didn't address, they want to shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer those questions.
Well, thank you all again. We really appreciate you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing for our Commonwealth and fighting for the least among us and for the people who need the help the most. We appreciate you all. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank
and you
you,
all
Josh.
have a great rest of your day. Thank
you.
Have a safe Memorial Day.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Happy